We are live. Welcome to Deep Impact Collective, the second episode. We hope that y'all was following along in the first one. Hope that y'all learned some things. Hope that y'all made some impact from what we were able to discuss the last time. Just kicking it off, I'm Sherelle. Again, this is Deep Impact Collective, where we value diversity, we value equity, we value education, and we value you people. So we're glad that you're here. Tabitha, you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I am a part of Deep Impact. I'm Tabitha Williams, the co-host. And as Sherelle has nicely said it, we are deep. We value all of what Sherelle has added. And
For
we're going to
sure.
get deep in discussion today. Our topic today is equity in education. And we're
Mm-hmm.
going to get deeper into that. And we're going to break that down and talk about resources in the community and the resources that we see versus the resources that we truly need. And so
Mm.
we're going to have some special guests today that's going to really touch on some of these community issues and see if we can make some impact and make some change and get deep with you. Part two, y'all
Part
ready?
two. I'm definitely ready.
Okay, so we're going to add in Miss Frederica Brown. Frederica Brown, if you want to just state your name and some of your purpose and what you would like to discuss. And we also have Hasmeen on here. So Hasmeen was in part one. We're gonna circle back to some of that discussion. If you both can introduce yourself and let's get it deep.
Well, hello, my name is Frederica Brown. I work in early childhood education, so equity and education is very big for me.
Mm.
Um, I believe that more attention needs to be brought to equity in education, especially early childhood education. So I'm here to just make an impact, deep impact, and I'm ready to go. Fire away with your questions.
Love it.
And I'm Hasmeen. I work at elementary school, and I come from Mexican parents, and I'm here to try to make a difference and just go over experiences because I truly believe that experiences do make a difference and it makes
Mm.
impacts, and you're able to spread the word too. It's a way of expression, and others hearing, oh, they went through something similar. I'm going through the same thing she's going. Okay, just ideas to make change, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. We love that. Thank you all for being here. This conversation is super important to me. I've been in education since maybe a long time. I graduated from Grand Valley in 2013, and I've been working in education ever since. And I've just been able to see just some inequities in different educational systems throughout, where we stay. And so this conversation is near and dear to my heart. I'm so glad that we're getting ready to get into this stuff.
Yeah. So let's just get it going. So one of our first questions that we have is, what does equity in education mean to you? So if Frederica or Hasmeen, either one of you or both of you can answer that.
I can answer that. Equity in education means giving people getting what they need, not
Mm,
what you give them. I think a lot of times, a lot of these agencies and systems, the first thing they want to do is they want to just throw out resources at families and parents and children
mm,
instead of try to gauge what they actually need. And I think
mm,
more attention needs to be brought to, not everyone needs the same thing. You bring a food truck to a certain area, but there might be some people who don't eat certain foods, or there might be allergies or things like that. You give resources, but you never know what people's reservations, religions are. So if you don't have a deep understanding of what a family actually needs, you can't adequately address what they need. You're just giving them what you have. So I think a deeper this look needs to be done when these resources are given to these families and these children.
That's a good point, because a lot, like you said, a lot of times there are just resources given just to check something off a box, just to say, okay, we gave them the resources that they need, but or that we think they need, without actually assessing what the families, what the children, what they actually need, and then supplying those things. That's a good point.
And I agree with all of that as well. And it's the problem that I see sometimes it's not, yes, the assumption is a big one, like I mentioned yesterday.
Mm,
But also like the data that's behind it too, like it's not accurate. A lot of the families are not putting exactly what they need because of fear, because of their background, or because, like I said yesterday, because of their legal status. So like I stated yesterday, a lot of families are not reporting income. So based on that, like, well, so, oh, they need food, they need this, you know, and that's again where it kind of goes where the intention is there, but then organizations don't really know what those families need. So how can we get it where families can actually express what they need so that can actually be given and provided to them?
mm.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm learning about right now, I'm actually getting my master's in educational leadership. And one of the things that I'm learning right now is how to create a needs assessment. And I wonder if a needs assessment is something that is essential before we go and throw out those different resources. We actually assess, what do our families need most, and how can we provide what they need most versus what we think they need.
Yeah. I love that, Sherelle, that you talk about that. But when you say create a needs assessment, make sure that assessment tool
Mm-hmm.
looks like what the people you're trying to reach. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they get these assessment tools and they're ready and they're using them, but the questions or the way they're designed still would not
Mm.
answer those get to those needs because the way that
That's a
they're
good
set.
point.
So they need to have people involved that actually is directly impacted by that or have the
Mm-hmm.
need to be a part of that assessment tool process.
And I'm going to keep it real. So this is about keeping it real. And I like food trucks. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I also, again, it goes back to the needs. I see a lot of families that go to these food trucks, but then I've also seen, and I've known firsthand, like friends or family friends, and that's when it begins to bother me,
Mm-hmm.
not just a little bit, a lot, where these families are, some families will go take the food, take a lot of food, and then they go, hey, do you want this? I got this. I got this. So they'll be passing it along to other people, which again, I mean, maybe the other people do need it, but then you're going and then they're basing data based on those individuals,
Mm.
you know? So that's where, to me, that's a problem too. It becomes a problem. We're not really getting the information that
Right.
is needed.
Because the
Hmm.
people who are coming are not the actual people who need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of that data is based on who's showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Mm.
they're saying we hosted something in 49507 and 100 people showed up, but the assessment doesn't say like how many people really showed up and got their needs met. How many
Mm-hmm.
people showed up and still didn't get the food that they needed because their children were allergic to everything that was in the basket. They didn't get to pick and they had
Mm-hmm.
to give away half of what they received. That happens to me all the time to the point I quit going to local food pantries because I have a large family and they
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of allergies and what's there versus, all they know is we need food. But every
Mm-hmm.
child can't eat that food. We need food of choice.
Right.
We need to have selection. So sometimes you can, yes, you did produce food, but you did not produce anything that I could take back to my family.
Mm. And so that just perpetuates a cycle of inequity. We think we're doing something good. We think we're doing something to change lives or provide what families need, but they're still going without because we aren't giving them what they need. That is something else, just cycles, just cyclical.
And then when food is thrown
Mhm.
away, and I see this a lot too, that's where it's like, okay, you know, like if you really need this, you're not going to throw the food away. So that's where it's, again, it just goes back to all of that.
Mm. What do you all think is the responsibility of the community within equity in education?
I would say the responsibility would be, um, it's kind of hard to say because,
Mm.
if you don't know, you can't ask what you don't know. And
Mm.
so, if you don't know how to advocate for yourself, then it'll be harder versus someone who does know how to advocate and speak up for themselves or their family. And I think a lot of times when these, like we were speaking of needs assessments, okay, so some agencies might do needs assessments, but they do them probably twice a year. They're not
Mhm.
ongoing. And my question is there a way to like, oh, hey, I need this. Can I come to you and tell you what I need as opposed to waiting um, in January or in April to for you to set up an appointment with me to ask me what I need. So, because
Mhm.
those things can be ever changing. I might not need something today, but tomorrow I might need it, or vice versa. So, I think a deeper look needs to be taken on when or how these assessments are taken, when they're
Mhm.
taken, and also possibly having someone that people feel comfortable with, because there's nothing like going into an office with someone who doesn't look like you and they're asking you like, what do you need, what do you need? I might tell someone that I don't need something just because I don't want to give out that information. So I think
Mhm.
Mhm.
pairing people up with um, someone who actually can meet their needs instead of like just assigning people to do these
Mhm.
assessments and like that is a big thing as well.
Well, I feel like a lot of those assessments are for the organization versus the people, because you
It
mentioned,
is.
and you made a really good point. You mentioned that they happen maybe twice a year. So, like at the start, for instance, like the start of the school year versus at the end of the school year. And it's really an assessment for the organization to see if they met their mark. Did they meet their
Yes.
mark? Did they meet their benchmarks? Did they check everything off the box versus did the people that they were assessing or the people they were trying to help or the people they were trying to educate, did they get the education that they needed? It's really honestly a benchmark for the organization, especially if they're doing it twice a year, at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, because it's like, did we meet our goals?
I
Yes.
would say anytime you're basing your information on data and numbers, it's already off. Equity is already
Mm,
out
It's
the window.
already
When you're
it's
already
already
basing it.
enacted.
So I think that's a big thing too. These agencies and systems want to base things on numbers, base it on the people instead of these
mm.
numbers, these benchmarks, and these standards and things like that. I think that if you base it on the people and meet them where they are, then everything else will fall in place.
But you know what? Like funders and people who give donations and sponsors and stuff, they don't base their dollars on people. They base their numbers on data. They base their numbers on uh those benchmarks, those assessments tools. They base their dollars on that. And if the person providing the education or providing the service can't provide data, then they don't get the dollars, which means they can't
Yeah.
do the work. So it's a
So it's really trying, Sherelle, to set the minds of the funders and the
Mhm.
organizations. The organizations, when I hear you say, what is the community's responsibility? I feel like our responsibility is to hold the organizations and these funders accountable to making
Mhm.
sure that they're meeting those needs.
Yeah.
So our responsibility is to let them know this is not working.
Mm.
um, and you're funding these dollars out here, but it's still not functioning properly. And that's just, you gotta give people what they need to be able to thrive and grow and meet those needs. You have
Yeah.
to really do that accordingly. And I know Hasmin, you talked a lot about some of these things that just was disproportionately fit in certain communities. And I'm thinking about this assessment tools, even if they would let people update them themselves monthly. If they're
Hmm.
already there, maybe they can chime back in and like Frederica said, it may not be like this month. Maybe they can update it.
Hmm.
Like there's access to their assessment and it can be updated as needed. And maybe the person, the organization, or the worker is checking it monthly, or like that. I don't know, but we need to revamp and rethink about how we're being assessed, how we're being surveyed, and how they're keeping up with data.
Hmm.
And another thing too that's it all ties together, and which is very hard. And to me, the community needs to keep it real, and that's where it
Mhm.
becomes hard. So having that trust again, like have oh
I would just keep going. I don't.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was the only one. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, hi.
yeah,
I'm doing.
yeah,
So just yeah, keeping it real, and I think that's very important because that organizations cannot know the needs if we're not if the community is not keeping it real, and
Mm,
it goes back like you said, Frederica, about like the person that somebody that looks like them. I know they feel that bond, they feel that the energy. They feel, oh, I can be honest, letting those, you don't have to write your name, it's anonymous. you know
right.
that's I know a lot of people that, okay, they just feel, oh, does my name have to be on here? Just making sure, like the food truck friends, going back to that, um a lot of them have like name, address, and stuff. So
Right.
some people do not feel comfortable giving that information to. So it goes back to just building that trust. And if we can build that trust, the community can keep it real,
Yeah.
which is hard.
I was
Hasmin,
gonna
you
say a
talk.
lot of times they're
I'm
scared to
sorry.
keep it real
Hmm.
because then people will know that they're going through certain things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's a level of vulnerability that some people just aren't willing to give or to share.
Hmm.
I've
I,
had that dealing with parents. I've had
uh-huh.
parents who, like, for example, in early childhood, we have a for example, at the site, we might have a director. I've actually had parents come to me and say, "Well, I could talk to you, but that director, I can't talk to them because so they have that rapport." So
Hmm.
it's one thing also to build a relationship with whom you're serving. Don't just come to the community when you want to get these metrics, get these numbers. Be seen. Be, don't just come when you're trying to get these numbers met or meet these quotas or anything like that. So I think it's very, very important when we talk about equity is also building rapport, because if you don't have rapport, you're not going to you can't have equity. You have to have some kind of baseline.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I wonder if that
Yeah, there's
rapport
so
comes with. Oh, go ahead, Tabitha.
I was just saying there's so many complexes in the nonprofit world and these different businesses. Um, Frederica and Hasmin, I'm sorry, touched on about trust.
Hmm.
And I want to tell you about a situation that it ignited me to do more and to speak up more. But in the schools, they were putting our children in like their elective class. They wasn't letting them pick them. They were like
Hmm.
defaulting all the kids into this life health class. And what I found out later is they needed to meet some numbers or they were going to lose those funds for that class. So they were starting to put the kids that really wouldn't say anything about it in those classes. And my daughter happened to be one. And I'm like, why did my daughter get to elect her class? Like, why was she just forced to be in this class? She has no interest. And they gave me all this runaround. And then finally, someone just told me, well, they got these dollars for this program. If it's not enough attendance in there, they're going to lose it. That transparency needs to be there from the beginning.
I'm
Because
like, why
had
wouldn't they
we
just say
known
that?
that, yeah, like had people known that, maybe people would like, okay, I'll give it a chance because we don't
Yeah.
want to lose these dollars. But don't just sneak them in there. You know what I mean? That's where the
Hmm.
community gets upset when they're not aware. If you tell me like, hey, if you guys don't come out here to this food drive, we won't have it anymore. Then we're gonna champion and try to get more people out here that really needs it. But if you're just
Hmm.
out here just doing things behind the community's back and trying to meet those numbers, that's not what we're gonna need. That's not gonna work. We need that transparent. We need to build those relationships and that trust. And like Hasmin said, we need to keep it real. Like, hey,
Yeah.
if y'all don't use it, you're gonna lose it. You need to be able to say that
Hmm.
with your community because one thing I've learned is value. We value keeping it real with us, even if it hurts. Keep it real with us.
And also like with free lunches, for instance, like, how like when you register your kids for school, they ask you that question, like your income and all of that. Again, going back to and the reason I keep going back to, because I've experienced it too. I was that parent at one point, where I was afraid to report the money that my husband was making cash, because he wasn't legal to work in the US back then. So I would always put zero because
Hmm.
I just didn't know. Now that I work in a school, I know why the question is, because that the school depends from those answers to receive
Free lunch.
the free lunches that we get. So it doesn't really affect the families. So that's something that I always explain to Spanish speaking families now, because they're afraid, like, oh, I don't want to put, what should I put? I'm like, well, you can just tell me whatever number, your husband makes or you make, and I'll explain why we need that information. And I can
Mhm.
just see how much of a difference that makes, because they think it's going to affect them and their numbers and their status here. So that's where the fear just comes. Like, they're just in fear. And once I explain that, they're like, oh, muchas gracias. Thank you. I was very confused about that question. So
Mhm.
just explaining it, keeping it real, both sides.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what Frederica said about building that rapport. They can trust you. I don't know if you told them about your experience before, but I'm sure they feel like they can trust you more so than they can trust different administration in the school or wherever this is, just because they can relate. They have that whole empathy thing, relatable thing, just rapport from somebody with the same lived experiences or just a deeper understanding that they wouldn't get anywhere else. Because I'm sure, like, if you weren't there, if they went to somebody else and they're like, oh, just fill out this paper, they wouldn't take time to sit down and answer questions that they have about which number to put. They just like put the number down. um so I'm sure that helped a lot.
Yes, and and that's so true, because there has been parents that I end up calling back, or they end up calling me back, like, "Oh, Miss, we did this." I'm like, "Okay, don't
Hmm.
worry, I'll help you fix it." So,
Yep.
and that's why, because they don't feel comfortable with other admin staff, because
Yep.
they can't relate.
Yep. I will say though, like, even my experience in education, I love that. That's my favorite part. Like when you get families that will talk to you versus like talking to the principal or like talking to somebody else, because they feel cool with you. Because I too, like what you said, has mean about like keeping it real. I'm really not about to lie. I'm not about to hold my tongue. I'm not about to lie. I'm gonna make sure you know the whole truth. I'm gonna make sure you know what's good for you and all of that stuff. And I really, really, that's my favorite part, when the parents is like, the principal said this, but let me go ahead and call Sherelle and see what's really happening. I love that.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
It just sticks with people more. They
Yeah.
That's where the relationship starts to build. Um, So, I'm just sitting here taking it all in, and sorry about this technology difficulties I'm having. So, I'm going in and out. We're keeping it real right here. This is real life things. It happens.
Oh, for sure.
But I want to talk more about like what people, the listeners out here, the people that's listening, what could they do to activate, the education system, whether it be the administration, whether it be the district, what can they do to activate people around a needs assessment, if that's what it is, or around making sure we have the appropriate resources available? Like, what do you guys recommend, and where could people that's listening in, where can they find out how to advocate? I heard Federica talk about not all people know how to advocate for themselves. What do you recommend they like join or start to be a part of, or like the first steps to that?
Good
So I
question.
know that was quite a few questions. Who can
Um,
want to
I would
answer?
say educate yourself. So look for those community organizers or those community um, organizations that that's what they do. That's they educate others to how to teach others how to advocate for themselves.
Mm,
Um, we have local organizations like UCC, Urban Core Collective, that will teach you how to go through the steps of advocating for yourself. And it's
hmm
not just some people have it's innate in some people, right. So some people just do that. They breathe, sleep, drink, advocacy. That's what they do. They wake up, what can I advocate for?
uh-huh.
I think it's more so just getting those fundamentals on how to talk to certain people's officials, knowing the processes and things like that on your local legislative bodies and all those things. It's education. So a lot of it is things that you have to self teach, because if you don't ask, people are not going to tell you. I'm the type of person, I ask. I ask questions. I'll go out and seek help if I need. So just finding those people that will bring you along on that journey and will show you how to advocate for yourself, I think that's a great asset to have like-minded people in your space. If you
Mm-hmm.
have people who are not like interested in advocating for themselves, they're not going to advocate for you. So being around like-minded people who are, dedicated to making sure that not just themselves but others advance.
I love it.
Yep, the same as what Frederica just said, advocating for yourself, because nobody else is really gonna. I mean, there can be people that are gonna try, but it's not like they don't know what you actually need. And like I said yesterday, I've had so many experiences, like as a child and also as a parent, where like it impacts, like not knowing impacts your child so much. Like me and my community or in my culture, it is very like, shh, don't say this, it's a secret, like kind of like secrets, keeping
Mm-hmm.
secrets. Please don't tell them because they shouldn't know about our personal life. So I grew up like that, where okay, they're not supposed to know this about me. So for the longest time I was like that, even as an adult and even as a mom. I'm like, okay, they don't need to know about my business, they don't need to know that my daughter has this,
Mm-hmm.
that, until I saw that it was impacting her, it was affecting her and education, and I needed to advocate. And I'm like, okay, some things here, something's wrong, and not having that shame, because there's nothing wrong with admitting, that you need support. And if you don't open up about that, your children are not gonna get the help they need, the assistance
Mm-hmm.
they need. And I had to learn that. And even now I still do that. I'm pretty open about things now, not because I'm dying for everybody to know about my personal life, but I've learned that you can help others by that. And it's very, very important, especially in education, especially with children. Because like I said yesterday, it starts when they are very little, starts in preschool, kindergarten, because that's how they can catch it at that point. If they need extra
Yeah.
support, that's when you can catch it. As they get older, yes, there's support, but I've also seen there's more shame, there's more embarrassment, there's more
Mm-hmm.
bullying, more making fun of, and when you're started from when you're 4 or 5, I think it's an easier process than when you start it when you're 10, 11, 12, 13.
1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
A
I
thousand
agree.
percent. That's when you talked about like your particular culture, um, I can definitely relate to that. To what happens at home stays at home type situation. Um, and even that just perpetuates cycles of inequity because you raise children who don't speak up when they need things, or raise children who don't see like deficit. They won't see lack, or they won't notice it
Hmm.
because they've been told to like keep it to themselves or keep it quiet. But what my pastor's wife always says, what does she say? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So the more you talk about it, the more you advocate for yourself, then you'll get the help, you'll get what you need.
And don't be afraid to speak up. I think a lot of times,
Mm,
sometimes, it's people feel like it's them against the system or the organization. You
mm,
have rights, you have, things that are important. So you should feel comfortable coming to either the agency or the organization or whomever the frontline people are, even if you have
yeah.
to go all the way to the top. Sometimes if you're not getting results from the bottom of, you have to go over their head. So don't be, afraid to do that. And I think a lot of times people are intimidated because they think, well, I got to know at this level. Well, for me, or this person said no, but I'm going to go above them and ask the next person. So I think also it's also that willingness to not give up and just take things for what they are, because you
Yeah.
can't just tell me no. You have to give me no in different form.
You got to tell different languages, huh? You got to tell me no and why.
See, and
And,
that's
you
Exactly.
the
know,
thing.
it's not
Re-
just
re-
not telling you no. It's like everybody can tell you what's no, but I always say, what can you say yes to?
Mm,
Because it no may be that, but it's usually something that they can say yes to. So what can you say
mm,
yes to? So even when there is a no, like I need to hear yes somewhere. Maybe you can't, fund $10,000, but I can fund 500. I need a yes somewhere. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Because that's what I think when I think about equity is like, what can we do to help right now? I mean, definitely everybody, this thing takes time and resetting our
Mm-hmm.
minds and giving people what they need. That takes time, but some of these things can occur right now. You know what I mean? we could definitely create some better assessment tools right now. We can definitely be listening more to the people that has the need right now. Those
Mm-hmm.
things can be happening right now. There could be some early discussions in the preschools, like you said, and then making sure that when they're assessing the preschool needs, they're assessing those families too, because they're tied together, they're rooted together. Like Hasmin made a really um, good example when you were talking about the fear of talking about your income. Like if people only knew, like this is not going to impact the decision to give you free food with that clear transparency, maybe they'll be more willing. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
just realized people don't come to city commission because if they've been in jail, they have a fear that policemen are there. They think police are there, policing. So like, I'm not going down there. I'm not coming in there. I'm not going to jail. I have a warrant. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the fear is. So we need to dig deeper and start asking questions and make sure we're providing the right resources and meeting the needs that people really have. And behind those needs are fears that has touched on.
And I'm big on
Fears and
examples,
stigma.
and you guys know that. So like just going back to not fearing, and even when you get the no, like for instance, my daughter has a condition, it's a neurological condition that her body reacts in a weird, like she just collapses. And it targets her in different ways. It's called dyskinesia. She also has dystonia. She has borderline epilepsy. So you see her, you would never be able to tell. So that kind of is induced by activity. That also targets her sleeping
Mm-hmm.
patterns too. So I brought this to the school attention back then when she was about 4.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they had all the records. So when she hit, it affected her writing, it affected her motor skills, it affected many areas. Once she hit first grade, it affects her left leg in particular. So in gym class, before COVID hit, it happened right there. They sent me her report card, or there was a report. They gave her a really low score, and it was rotation, her leg. She has poor this, poor that. She needs to work on this. That made me so angry
I
because
bet.
she has a medical condition. You guys, I was like, you guys have her medical file. She's seen in Ann Arbor. I take her all the way over there. She gets tested all the way. That's how severe she has this. She's medicated. It made me really angry. Then shortly after COVID hit and everything, I changed her school. So now, like, I'm big. I was always afraid to be seen as an angry woman, but when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to my child, I'm like, heck no.
Right.
My child needs this, and it's not an excuse. Like, please, if do not mark her down for something that she literally
You
can't
can't
do.
control.
Yeah, she can't control it. She'll be able to do it, but it takes her time. Like monkey bars, 3 years. 3 years it took her to be able to do the monkey bars. It took her
Mm-hmm.
3 4 years to be able to ride a bike. She never gave up. She can do the things. It just takes her time. But don't
You
mark
go,
her down
girl.
on something that she has a condition, and because that's going to lower my child's self-esteem too,
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm pretty big on that. I'm like, nope. Like, so when I took our votes, I'm like, nope, you can't see this. I see it at home. You can't see it because I take all of that at home. I see it all at home. I know how it impacts my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So just like when people don't see it, it's very hard, especially in education too, because it's very hard because they're like, oh, this mom, she's just making this up. We don't see this here. Hello. Like, no, it doesn't always work that way. Like, I know my child, there's been testing that supports everything that I'm telling you. So she's in therapy. She has all of this that's helping her with her motor skills. So no, I'm not just a crazy mom that's making this story up.
Right.
Like I don't want to have to deal with her all of these years when she wasn't getting any sleep, when she was collapsing, when she was not having any movement in her left side of her body. So it is very difficult. Again, it goes back to listening. Education professionals, they need to listen to the parents too and actually care and actually listen. Well, you know what, I don't see this here, but if mom is saying that, let's keep them on the radar, just a listening part.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not. I'm
It's
not
not
even
a
her. I'm
blanket.
sorry you had that experience. Oh, go ahead. I was just saying I'm sorry you had that experience, and I'm not even her mom, and I'm mad about it. Like I want to know, was that
Yeah.
teacher reprimanded? Like
I don't think so. I mean, I brought it to teachers' attention, and like I said, everything happened right when the COVID was happening, and it was just. But I did bring it to the school's attention. I'm like, what the heck? So, what really made me mad was also besides that was that they tell you, oh, don't worry about it. You know, don't, I'm like, what the heck?
That
What do you mean,
just
don't
made
worry
me so
about
much matter. What do you mean?
I'm like, what do you
It's
mean, don't worry about
documented.
it?
Once it's documented, you worry about it. Don't document that. I don't know where them files are going. What I like what you touched on, Hasmin, is you spoke up. You
Right.
pushed back. You didn't go with what is doomed to be experts. You are the expert of your child and your family. So I love that you pushed back in that process. They probably had to do that, assess that, but you were like, absolutely not. I don't care what your radar reads, and if it falls under here, then that means she's poor. But I'm saying, for my child, this is her norm. And this is what
Right.
we have to do. This is not a one shoe fits all when it comes to education,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to meeting people's needs. Like, even if everybody says they need, a laptop or they need assistant with computers, they may have totally different needs with those assistants. One may need the actual physical computer, one may need to know how to navigate, one may need to understand a process. So we can't like put people in this box and expect everybody to fit. It's like we have to really individualize those needs. And I love that you tap and push back on that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely goes back to
Yasmin,
what you said. Go ahead.
Yasmin, I would add, I would think an equitable approach to that situation would be that gym teacher ask saying, "Is there anything that you need? What's not trying to like ostracize you for your child not being able to do this or that in gym class, but asking what you need. Are there
Mm-hmm.
are there services that instead of just saying they reporting,
More
well,
help on
there's
this.
always root causes to things, right? Things happen, but there's always a root cause to it. So going back to the root cause, and first of all, if they did their research, they would have seen that should have been a requirement for them to look in the file to see if there's any preconditions conditions they have or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. So equitable approach would be doing their research before they just assessed. You have to know
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about before you just say, "Oh, this is that, this is that." You have to know. So I think that um, be doing more backup and research that would have been first step into being an equitable action instead of just saying, "Well, your child wasn't able to do this, so they marked, down." Well, with my child, he had trouble doing certain things with his motor skills. But the teacher mentioned that and gave me activities, things I
Mm.
can do to can advance and get better. So there are some educators get it. They know they've been, um, in education in a while. They can tell, you know,
Exactly.
equitable and what's not. Might not think of it, as far as like, oh, this is the equitable, but they do it just because they know that's the right thing to do. If there's
Mm-hmm.
something that's wrong, if you think there's something wrong with what you're saying, chances are it's not equitable. If you think that if you're coming across the wrong way, chances are that it's not equitable. So I think a lot of times the administration needs to um, get schooled themselves on how to speak to people
Mm-hmm.
because they come off just wrong, and
Out the
that
gate.
just drives people and parents away. Yeah. So when you come to a parent or a family in a wrong kind of way, that's automatically like, oh no, I can't come to them with this. I can't speak upon this because I'm gonna get a certain reaction. So I think just communication and how you speak to parents and families is just the first step. Also, that goes with building that rapport, but that's one of the first steps, that communication and making sure that your actions and things that you do are equitable, right? And you do things in an equitable way.
Frederica, I love that you talk about that communication and doing things in an equitable way.
Mm.
Back in our day, we had relationships with our teachers, with our families, with those schools. If your cousin went there, you went there, your mama went there. There was that connectivity, there was that longevity, and there was that trust there. I believe I would love to touch on like what's missing today.
Mm.
Like I don't know what's missing in the schools today, and for me, it's just like it's relational things. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the time to be relational.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is task driven and meeting those numbers and quotas, and the world is at a speed of the internet. And so, what you guys, thinking as you guys being our guests today, what's missing for you in
That's a
this?
good question.
It keeps going back to me, and like I mentioned a lot yesterday, and I've been mentioning today, it's empathy and care. And honestly, I do see a lot of teachers like in my work area that care,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it takes. It's baby steps, Unfortunately, it's very like baby steps, and but when you have the heart and you actually are doing something because you care, that's what gives me like light. I'm like, okay, this person is going to make a change, whether it's going to take years for them. They're not going to give up because they actually care. They
Mm-hmm.
care about their job. They care about their students. So that gives me hope. So just having empathy, caring, doing something. Again, like we all mentioned, having that relationship, having that bond, everything connects. You connect that, and advocating, even as teachers, keep advocating too, not just the families, but the teachers who care, which I know a lot of teachers that do care. Keep advocating. Don't stay quiet, even if you feel like you're being shut down by your leaders. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Frederick?
Um, I echo what Yasmin said. Empathy is key because it's hard for someone to imagine what someone else's life is like unless they've been in those shoes or
Mm-hmm.
they've been in those certain situations. Um, for example, there's social workers at schools or in different agencies that might assist families with, for example, let's say rental assistance or utility assistance or whatnot. But if you haven't been through those experiences and had to be without lights for a week or had to figure out how to get food for your children or your family, it's not going to relate to you. It's not going to, can't connect with those people. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to go through these things, these traumas to be effective, but I would say it's a connect. It's a
Right.
disconnect when people do not go through those experiences and do not have those lived experiences and life experiences that other people, the people that they're serving, um, because for example, you look at AA and counselors. A lot of times, a lot of AA counselors are people who have been past alcoholics or have been
Mm-hmm.
through those stages and steps. So I think that's key. Having people who
Mm-hmm.
can relate to the people serving, that's the first step.
Yeah, I like both of your responses to that, and it just has me thinking about you talked about having like administration and people in place that care. I think about, are we making sure even the people that care for our children, our families, are they well taken care of too? Because when we think about equity, we have to serve everyone, So even the people that's actually being the resource, that they're the source, we have to make sure that they have what they need to be a resource.
Mm-hmm.
You can't pull in nothing. Nothing from nothing is going to pull nothing. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
about that with teachers. I visited these schools recently, and not one of them told me they had a mental health practice or a retreat or activity. And I'm just like, who's taking care of you so that we can take care
Yeah.
of our children?
Yeah,
And
right.
They say you can't pour from an empty cup.
right.
Mm-hmm. You asked the question about like what's missing in schools, and that's I don't know. I've been asking myself that question all week. I I echo what you all are saying about empathy, equity, and I would also like to add maybe commitment and dedication. So I can only speak for schools in urban neighborhoods. I don't know much about like private schools or schools in different neighborhoods, but a lot of those teachers in schools, in public schools or schools in urban neighborhoods, they are there because if you work there for 2 years, you get your grants forgiven or you get your loans forgiven. and you get money back and you get all these things. And so they don't have the same kind of dedication and they don't offer those same lived experience as the students that they are serving. So it's hard for them to be empathetic, and it's even hard for them to see themselves there long term, because they're really just there to get their loans forgiven. So I think that's what's missing. And I think about what you said, Tabitha, about like how you went to that school because your cousin went there, your mama went there, and everybody went there. And we're not seeing that perpetuated because our teachers are only there for 2 years, 1.5 years, 2 years. All you have to do is serve for 2 years and get your loans forgiven. And I feel like the students can feel that. If the students know, my teacher, I'll get a different teacher next year, I'll get a different teacher in a couple years, they're going to behave accordingly, you know?
Yeah, not giving up on them
and to
because,
have
like you said,
meaningful
children can sense
care.
that.
What you say?
Yeah.
Not giving up on them. I heard that one.
Yeah, not giving up. Just because it's I see that with students every day where again it goes back to baby steps, and that's how you can tell you're making a difference. Where some students won't look at you. They'll be like, I'll say hi every day. And then I'll continue with my highs until all of a sudden I'll go like, hi.
Right.
I'm like, yes, I got a high.
Made it.
And then another day, one student one day, like, he noticed I wasn't there for recess one day. And because I was, I would try to play basketball with them. They would ignore me, 100% ignore me, but every day I would still be there, just yelling. I'm like being a goofball, And the one day I wasn't there because I was at a meeting. He just starts talking to me. Just very serious. He's like, you weren't there today. Why?
Why?
He's like, well, you better be there tomorrow. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a win right here. Like,
I'm killing it.
I'm getting somewhere. Now, like, he gives me high fives every single day, and it's, a smile. And they are testing us. They test us. They want to make sure most likely they have a lot of people that have given up on them. And it's the trust. Having that trust. A lot of times where they're giving you an attitude. Yes, they need you to be there. They need you to care. They also need you. I would put them against the wall all the time too. It's not like I wouldn't. Like I would, You're not going to talk to me that way. Go against the wall. And I'm doing this because I'll be kidding. I care.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we're getting near our end, and this discussion has gotten really deep, as we know we are going to do. Don't let part 2 be the end of this. Before we wrap it up, we have one more question that we want to ask both of you. If you could wave your magic wand and just magically make one of these issues just disappear, or something you could just tap into and change, what would it be?
That's a good one. Ooh.
You can only pick one.
I gotta pick one. I know that's the problem.
Yeah, we know it's a lot of issues out here, but we just need one. And I'm starting to get background noise, so yeah, they know it's wrapping up.
So if I can eradicate one issue or inequity, I would say possibly accountability. Making it practice if inequities are done and noticed, that they are held, the systems are held accountable, and making that process available for parents, giving parents that options, like, hey, if you found that, because you see that in like restaurants or things like that, if your service isn't good, you can call this number or you can talk to this person. So I think that's the same thing needs to happen in education. At the forefront, at the beginning of the school year, if your needs aren't getting met, you have the right to talk to this person, put this in writing, things like that, letting it be known that the parents have rights. So I think that's the first step, is giving that voice to the parents from the get-go, so that they can build on that. Don't wait for a situation to arise and be like, oh well, you could have came to us earlier, you could have did this and that. No, I think if parents are given that at the beginning of the school year, when they first start in school, if you're not satisfied with this, or if you have questions, or if you have concerns, feel free to contact us at any time, or things like of that nature, because um, a lot of times things are left unsaid. I just let it go, or just thrown under the rug. No, say something, speak, and give that option to parents to be able to have that platform.
Mm.
And
Okay,
I'm gonna,
Cheryl,
you guys,
Cheryl got to bounce in 1 minute. Okay, how about you, Hasmin? You got something quick when we let it go?
yeah, I'm just gonna keep the same as I said yesterday. Empathy, because again, it ties everything together. By having the empathy, like Frederica said, you're giving the parents the opportunity to open up, to have a say. So everything just goes together, So just make sure you're giving them an option. Make sure parents are not feeling like, oh, okay. Sometimes I feel like many people make them feel like, oh, they're the child. Oh, you got to listen to us. You got to listen to us. Like, show
Mm.
them that you care. Give them the opportunity to speak up. Don't be a robot, because when you do that, you're not going to have somebody be open. I'm not going to be open with somebody that's not giving me the chance.
Mm.
Thank you for that. Well, Deep Impact Collective and our viewers, part 2, we are going to continue to have this dialogue. We're going to continue to have community talk. Sherelle, I know you have to go. You want to wrap it up?
I do. I could talk about this all day, and I really could, because Yasmin just made a really, really good point about allowing children to have a voice and allowing them to know that their voice is important. And I cannot even hold in on it because I gotta go. But thank y'all for coming. Thanks for being a part of this. Really appreciate
Of course.
y'all. See y'all next time.
See ya.
The next